And just like that, I unqualified myself from the Boston Marathon. So you may be wondering, what on earth does it mean to unqualify myself from the Boston Marathon? Well, in order to share that, I have to give a little bit of a backstory. And this is my race recap of my last marathon that I just ran. So I just finished the Mount Nebo marathon a couple weekends ago. And leading up to this race, I really had kind of unsure expectations of what I was going to do. I ran a half marathon earlier this summer and just kind of dragged myself across the finish line and realized that if I'm going to run a marathon in 8 weeks, I have to really get after it. And so for 5 consecutive weeks, I ran a 20 plus mile long run on every weekend. Now, that may seem like totally crazy, but honestly, it was a lot of fun. I had a great time doing it, and I kind of broke my own glass ceiling doing that. Now, I do not recommend that for everyone, so please don't go out and say, okay, I'm going to go run 20 miles every single weekend. But what I did through those 5 weeks is I kind of progressed intensity and got ready for the race. So by the time I ran that 5th long run, I was ready to go. It was a simulation run, hit the splits I needed to, things were locked in, and it was time to show up to this race and run. So fast forward a little bit, get to the night before the race, and I start feeling like I'm getting a fever, getting some cold sweats. I'm like, man, I cannot be getting sick right now. But that night I started catching a cold and the nose started running and all that. Then around midnight, I went to the bathroom and began passing a kidney stone, which sucked. Been through that a couple times, but this one, oh man, it was probably 45 minutes of just misery. And I think the worst part was knowing that I needed to go to bed because I needed to get to the starting line, or needed to get to the finish line to get on the bus to get to the starting line. Next thing I know, my alarm's going off at 2:45 to get ready to drive to the finish line. So get everything ready, get to the finish line, get on the bus, get up to the start line. And I knew that this was not the ideal 12 to 24 hours leading up to this race. I had worked a pretty full day on that Friday. I had tried drinking lots of water and lots of different things to get ready. But honestly, the kidney stone kind of took it out of me. And yeah, really didn't know what to do. So I warm up like I normally do, felt pretty good through the start. My game plan, because I had run the course before, my game plan was just get to that 5 mile mark. Because if I could get to the 5 mile mark, I had already done a simulation before where I ran the exact splits I needed to do those last 21 miles. So I told myself if I could just get to the 5 mile mark, I'll be okay. So the race starts, super dark. We're on top of a mountain at like 9,000 feet, pitch black. And I'm running basically with just a couple guys who have headlights. And that's really all the light I had. So we're running down the mountain, and I guess I forgot how hilly the first chunk of this race is. And, you know, you're still dropping about 1,000 feet in the first like 8 or 9 miles, but you're also climbing 800 feet in the first 8 or 9 miles. And so just as fast as you're going down, you're turning right around and going right back up. And I guess mentally I wasn't quite prepared for the steepness of the climbs and maintaining at least a quickened effort. My goal was to just take it easy through those first 5 and then kind of turn it on the last 21. And so I get through the 5 mile mark and I'm like, oh man, here I am. Like, this is great. Like I'm right on target where I wanted to be. Unfortunately, at that point, I began to feel some of the effects of early dehydration. And I thought, well, crap, what are we going to do here? And my issue with marathons is I tend to always have to stop and pee at some point. And so I kind of fought off how much water I was drinking, when to take gels, all that stuff. And really my whole nutrition plan kind of went out the window. I got to about mile 10 and my knee felt fine. My stomach felt fine. But I realized at mile 10 that I started crunching the numbers and I had some work to do. I knew if I wanted to get the time I wanted to do, I had to start speeding up and I had to start adjusting my pace a little bit. So I started turning on the jets a little bit, picked up the pace. Oddly enough, I don't know if I missed it or they took it down, but I knew if I could get to the halfway point in about 1:30, I'd be okay to get under that 3 hours. And so I'm going through, I'm looking at my watch. I'm like, okay, where's the half marathon start? and they must have taken it down. And so that kind of messed with my perception a little bit, because I knew if I could get to that spot, I'd have a couple miles of flat and then it would just drop out again. So I kept going. Around mile 15, that's when I started to feel that I started feeling like I was in the groove. Like, okay, the splits are coming. I was clipping off 630s, 640s. Things are moving the way I want them to. And at that point, I just did the final countdown. Okay, mile 16, you got 10 to go. Mile 17, got 9 to go. So I kept pushing, got to mile 20, and that was a spot in my mind that I knew, like, okay, that's where I'm either going to know I have it or I know I don't have it. And I'd run up the canyon a number of times that I knew if I could get to that 20.5 mile mark, I knew the course like the back of my hand and I was ready to go. So I got to that point and I looked at my watch. I'm like, okay, I'm starting doing the numbers in my head. Okay, if I run, this and this split, I can keep going. I'll be fine. I have this much wiggle room. And that's when the wheels started to come off a little bit. So 21, I was still on pace. 22, I was still on pace. But around 22 and a half, my headphones beeped with low battery. And I thought, well, crap. I got 4 miles to go. Let's just finish this thing. Let's keep going. By about mile 24, the effects of that first 8 or 9 miles started to creep up a little bit. I felt my legs get really heavy. I actually started feeling like I was going to pass out a little bit. I felt like my head was really heavy, and I felt like anytime I was like trying to look around, my head would start spinning. And I felt a little bit like I was running up like this. And each time I moved it, that nausea would set in. I thought, well, okay, well, if I pass out, which one of these people around me are gonna stop and help? And so I kept going. Eventually my headphones died around mile 24. So I took them out and I realized that my head was so plugged from the elevation change that every step, it was like someone was tapping on my ear. Like, when you're at the ocean or you're driving or something and you just keep tapping and the sound goes like, that's what I was hearing in my head. And I thought, well, okay, all right, well, I got 2 miles. It's like, I got basically 15 or 16 minutes of running. So I kept going. The last 2 miles were a bit of a struggle. But I got my B goal as far as what I wanted to do. And so for Boston, I'm 34 right now. And to qualify for 2025, I needed to run under 3 hours, which I'll fast forward to that in just a second. But my B goal was to get under 305 because that would get me into 2026 because I move up age divisions. So I finished in about 301. Pretty pleased with that. A little disappointed with how it finished. But considering the buildup, the lack of speed work, the kidney stone, everything, I was like, okay, I finished stronger than I ever have a marathon, which is kind of sad. But at the same time, like, I felt really proud of myself. Now, here's how I unqualified from the Boston Marathon. So, like I said, I needed to get well under 3 hours to qualify for next year. Didn't get that. And so for 2026, I needed to run 305. Well, with a 4-minute window, thought I had it. It's like, okay, that's a good start. It gets me in. It just gets me down that road. Well, as you may or may not know, this week, the Boston Athletic Association changed their standards. And they've adjusted it now to the 35 to 40-year-old or whatever it is. You now have to run a 3-hour marathon. And as quickly as I qualified for it, I have unqualified myself from the Boston Marathon. So it's a little disappointing as it is, but I have to be honest, I saw it coming. Back-to-back years of record applicants into the Boston Marathon. There's, what was it, 31 or 32,000 last year, 36,000 this year. That's a lot of people qualifying. And so it was it was expected, especially because there's other world majors that have tougher standards and tougher things, and tougher routes to get to. But it happens. It just means that we're going to rise with the tide a little bit. If we bump the standards up, we're all going to get a little bit better. And honestly, I'd rather have that than go the other direction. I'd rather know that I had to work harder to get there because it means I was faster then than I am now. And so going forward, that's kind of my mentality of, okay, this was my 4th time qualifying for Boston, and I still don't have a ticket to Boston yet. And so I have this fire burning in me that, okay, I got to get there, and I want to get there, and I'm going to work hard to get there. And so as this fall season approaches, I'm going to work really hard and I'm going to tweak some things in my training because with each marathon, I feel like I've dialed it in a little bit more. There's a popular nutrition program called Precision Nutrition, and one of their main key motivators that they share with people is there's no such thing as failure, only feedback. And so as I go forward, that's what I'm thinking. Okay, I didn't fail anything. I did what I wanted to do, but this is feedback for how I can improve. Now, I shattered a lot of my own personal glass ceilings going into this marathon. Like I said, I did 5 straight weekends of 20 milers, which I don't know if I've ever done that many 20 milers for a marathon period, but to do it back to back to back to back to back weeks and feel good and stronger doing it, that was a huge motivation and a huge confidence booster for me. Now, another thing that I'm going to tweak going forward is this shortened build-up for this marathon. It was only 8 weeks. I did, I think, 1 day of speed work. Now, that's pretty nuts if you think about it. If you're trying to run a specific time, why would you train and not do any speed work? But my whole goal going into it was to basically be mentally strong and just prepare myself in a way that I can approach it and feel good doing it. Like I said, a shortened marathon, going from what I knew I would not be able to finish to being able to run a 3:01 in about 8 weeks was more than I could ever ask for. So as I go forward, I'm going to tweak some things as far as speed work goes. One of my secret weapons for this build up that helped me get to where I wanted to be was I actually spent 2 or 3 days a week just straight up power hiking. Now, when I say power hiking, I'm not talking about just like casually going on trails. I'm talking about looking up at the mountain and going straight up and going as hard as I could for about 30 to 45 minutes and then jogging back down. And so it's kind of like speed work in disguise, but I felt so much stronger. And so as fall shows up and winter shows up, I'm going to have to adjust some things, but that's something I'm going to use going forward, is spending some time cross-training with that power hiking. So what's up next for me? I'm throwing my hat into a backyard ultra marathon next month, which I'm super pumped to get footage and document that journey because I've never done an ultra before. But this is a backyard ultra and it's going to be a fun time. 12 hours, about 52 miles. It's going to be awesome. As far as marathons go, I am registered for a marathon in a few months in January, down in southern Utah. So this fall is basically all about just maintaining what I did in this shortened build-up. So the goal this fall is to just build up mileage again, get after it, stay focused, and just build upon what I've already done. And we'll see how this marathon in January goes. So if you're new to the channel and you watch this all the way through, be sure to hit that subscribe button, smash that thumbs up button. In the comments below, leave a comment about the craziest marathon that you've ever run. If you haven't run a marathon and you want to run a marathon, comment down below which one you're going to do, because where performance is measured, performance improves. And if you want to set goals to run a marathon, put it into the universe, put it out there, tell yourself you're going to do it, and go prep for it. That's all I got today, and I'll see you in the next video. What's up, guys? Coach Jason here with the Running Seekers channel. I'm coming at you with another video sharing how I unqualified myself from the Boston Marathon. Yes, you heard that right. Unqualified myself. Now, there's a little bit of a story that I need to share Now, there's a little bit of a story that... So you may be wondering, what on earth does it mean to unqualify yourself from a marathon? Well, here it is. So this summer, I ran a half marathon and decided, you know what? I feel like I'm going to run a marathon. And so I trained really hard in a very short window to prep for the Mount Nebo marathon here out in Utah. So I ran the race,